This is James Trishnerick here. I've got a full slate of topics to discuss with you guys today. This is Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. Plenty of news to talk about today. Plenty of backstories in the NFL. A couple of free agent signings, including notably one big one in Washington, D.C. Deshaun Jackson signing a 3-year, $24 million deal with the Redskins, $16 million of it guaranteed. Now, I got a little bit to talk about Deshaun Jackson. My opinion of him, as I said it last night, he reminds me of some guy I went to high school with that I really don't like at all. He's got that kind of mentality to him, that kind of like, he's just kind of like, he just reminds me of him so much it's scary. I mean, but the thing about it is the dude can play. The dude is talented. And now look at it this way. Robert Griffin III now has Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, Jake Reed, Alfred Morris, and the offensive line that could potentially be better next year. You don't think with those guys, and then Reed at tight end and Morris at running back, that they can't produce? They better be producing. Because here's the point. If they don't, then that'll really prove that Shanahan really did end RG3's career by not taking him out of that game against the Seahawks to save his damn knee. Among the whole situation involving the Redskins and the Eagles and whatnot, Richard Sherman, cornerback for the Seattle, relatively outspoken player, you might have heard of him, has criticized the Philadelphia Eagles for keeping Cooper and cutting Jackson, and also saying, well, how come Cooper and Irsay can get in trouble and not Jackson? He's got a point. He does have a point in a way. I'll give him that. What he's right on is that Cooper probably should have been given more of a stricter penalty than he did, if he had any at all. Irsay probably should have gotten a hell of a penalty. And Jackson, that's where he's wrong. That's where him being right ends. Deshaun Jackson was due over $10 million this year. And just his base salary, didn't even count guaranteed money and bonuses. $10 million he was due. And the fact that he was kind of butting heads in the locker room with Chip Kelly, and the fact that he wasn't the kind of guy Kelly wanted on his football team, I think is the reason more or less why he got released. Not because at least had something to do with it. I wouldn't say that, it was gang activity. I don't know where that story came. It came from the Eagles, then shame on them as an organization. And seriously, that just makes you look so bad. But Sherman's right about Cooper and Irsay. Jim Irsay, driving around with drugs, DUI, and now he's in rehab. You've got Riley Cooper going to Kenny Chesney concert, screaming the N-word like crazy. There's no place for either thing. And actually, Jackson actually didn't do anything. That's the thing. What needs to be stated here, though, is here's where Richard Sherman is wrong. Cooper got paid money because they felt that, yes, you made mistakes, but he had changed over time and he'd become more of a grown human being. He had matured as a football player. Yes, what he said was wrong. Absolutely. Anybody knows me know I'm about as unracist a person as you can get, and you know how I view those things. Well, put it this way. Cooper deserved to be paid because he had a good season. And the fact that he's proven this past year, staying out of trouble after the Chesney incident, that he has changed. At the time, could they have cut him? Yeah. But the point being is that Cooper's only making $5 million a year. I can think of several receivers off the top of my head that are easily making more than that. Next thing is that Deshaun Jackson, again, didn't mesh with Chip Kelly well, was not really, worth the $10.3 million, and I don't see any reason why they should have kept him. I mean, I knew they were going to cut him from the get-go. I didn't think anyone was going to pick up $10.5 million for Deshaun Jackson. Maybe if he'd have been 7 or 8, I could have seen that, but $10.3 million for Deshaun Jackson is just absolutely ridiculous. Back to also football related. Johnny Manziel and Teddy Bridgewater, I reported yesterday, are visiting with the Patriots. The Patriots are 29th overall and need a backup because Ryan Mallett's in the last year of his contract. Again, I'll talk a little bit about Manziel in a little bit as I compare him to who should be taken number one overall, him or Jadeveon Clowney. But here's the point. The Patriots could probably get Derek Carr or probably try to trade for a backup quarterback or something, or maybe even wait till next year and try to get a guy. But I don't think right now that's their biggest issue. Their biggest issue is they had a lot of cap space and they didn't hardly, use much of any of it except to sign Darrelle Revis. Other than Darrelle Revis, they didn't do a damn thing with the money. They could have definitely gotten a big play receiver. Look at all the people that have had problems emotionally on other teams that have gotten in trouble like crazy. As soon as they went to New England and played for Belichick, it was almost like those problems went out the window. And he could have handled Deshaun Jackson. I think Deshaun Jackson should have gone to New England or San Francisco. Those teams were both a game shy of meeting in the Super Bowl. Would have been better off than going to the Redskins, who were 3-13 in a bottom feeder. But anyways, back to Johnny Manziel. I think in comparison with Jadeveon Clowney, if I was the holder of the number one overall pick in the draft this year, and I had a choice of taking Johnny Manziel or Jadeveon Clowney, there's no doubt in my mind I would take Johnny Manziel. And a lot of people are surprised by that, and honestly, here's why. They were talking today about Jadeveon Clowney potentially playing 3-4 outside linebacker. I think that'd be incredibly stupid and a complete and total waste of his talent. Lamar Woodley was the exception to the rule, and he could switch to a 3-4 outside because he was more athletic and he was carrying less baggage at the time he was drafted. He picked up more baggage, and as a result, he started to not do shit. But that's a different story, different time. Jadeveon Clowney, and Marcus Ware is different too because he's just so much faster. Jadeveon Clowney's only going to be able to do one thing, and that's play 4-3 end. I don't think him as a 3-4 end would work because he'd have to go against 2 to 3 guys at once. And he had enough trouble this year going against 2 guys. If he has to go against 2 NFL offensive linemen versus 2 collegiate offensive linemen, when he already only registered, I think, a couple sacks all year, he's not going to do as well. If Jadeveon Clowney goes to the Texans, it'll be setting him up for failure. Johnny Manziel is the guy that they should be taking, and I'll tell you why. I know people saying, it's because, he's flashy, because, he's not as, meat and potatoes as Jadeveon Clowney. That's not the point. Johnny Manziel is flat out a better football player. I believe he is the best football player in this draft. I know Sammy, and a lot of that's a stretch saying that, and a lot of people are going to call me crazy, but think about it. How many quarterbacks over the last few years have dominated the SEC in their first 2 years of college? How many? You could probably count them on one finger. People want to say, well, maybe he'll be like Tim Tebow and flame out. He can throw a lot better than Tebow. People are going to say, well, look at Jamarcus Russell, who's great in the SEC, and he flamed out. Jamarcus Russell had no work ethic. Johnny Manziel can compete, and he can win. You give him some good receivers. You give him DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Johnson and a good offensive line blocking that the Texans have. You factor in Arian Foster in the backfield and maybe pick up another receiver in free agency. You got the potential to put up some points, big time. I think him going to Texas would be a great thing. And another thing is that he's got Bill O'Brien there. Bill O'Brien turned Christian Hackenberg at Penn State into a respectable collegiate starting quarterback. If he can do it with Hackenberg, imagine he can do it to Manziel. And for people that keep talking about Manziel running willy-nilly, he might have gotten away with that a lot his freshman year. His sophomore year, his yardage in terms of rushing completely halved itself. People are just looking at him and saying, all he does is he runs like Michael Vick and he runs like Tim Tebow and Fran Tarkenton. The Fran Tarkenton comparison is very true. In fact, if anything, I can think of a guy who's like a hybrid of those two, and that's Steve Young. He's like a righty Steve Young. His first year at Texas A&M, he ran for 1,410 yards. His second year, he ran for 759. That's a big difference. That is a very, very big difference. It just goes to show you that he is really starting to play more from the pocket and play a lot less outside of it. And he can roll out and he can get some yards with his legs, but he's not going to run near as stupidly as Robert Griffin III did his rookie year. That's not even close. Now, would I compare Manziel to RG3 coming out? Probably not, but still, it's a warranted comparison. But I think Manziel's a much smarter football player and a much smarter human being too. Because sometimes RG3 doesn't know how to be a leader. Other news around the NFL, the Giants signing defensive end Robert Ayers. The Giants have now added 5 linemen this offseason. I mean, if you look at their roster now, the linemen they've added, it really does go to show that they're trying to protect Eli Manning and bolster a running game that was terrible last year. If you look at the 2013 Giants and their run game, they ran for a grand total of 1,332 yards. 29th in the league. 30th yards per attempt. 27th in carries. They upped that total a little bit, and that could really take a lot of pressure off Eli because he's historically done his best when the Giants have been able to run the football. And that more or less adds more to this interesting NFC East offseason. Because that seems to be the most dramatic division in all of football. And how do I think it's going to play out, though? I think the bottom feeder, again, is going to be Washington. It's number 4. Because Deshaun Jackson, really good to get him. And RG3 gets healthy. But did they actually do anything to help their defense? At all? No. They really have not taken the steps to go ahead and get a big-name guy. And my honest opinion is that they could have gone out and gotten several players in free agency. They would have been more than happy to come to Washington because the way Daniel Snyder throws money around, they'd have been fat, happy pigs. Redskins being their former name, and the Hogs, no pun intended. They would have been happy as hell to come to Washington and to play and make all that money. So I put them at 4th right now. The third team's the Cowboys. Definitely number 3 because, yes, you lose Miles Austin, DeMarcus Ware, and Jason Hatcher. Those are 3 big parts of your team. DeMarcus Ware has arguably been the best pass rusher of this generation. Miles Austin's been a very reliable receiver for them in his career, and even though he's old and he's had injury problems, he's still as good as receivers you can find. And then you got Jason Hatcher, who had one of the best years any of the defensive linemen in the NFL had last year. He was a really good interior force. And what did they do instead? Just go out and sign a backup quarterback. Really, that's all that they did. I can't remember actually who the Cowboys signed. That's the sad thing. I'm pretty sure they re-signed Kyle Orton. Yeah, I'm checking NFL.com right now. Yeah, they signed Brandon Weeden. They lose Hatcher, Austin, and Ware and just go out and get Brandon Weeden. Yeah, great idea. I put number 2 as the Eagles. Deshaun Jackson's going to be a bigger loss for that team throwing the football than they think, even though Macklin comes back. But I think the Giants can take this division with their improved offensive line. They'll be able to run the football better, and signing Dominique Rodgers-Kamara to a big contract helps the secondary out immensely. Speaking of signings, the Steelers have been relatively active this free agent period, more so in recent years. Last month signing Mike Mitchell to a 5-year, $25 million contract, the former Panther safety. They signed Darius Hayward-Bay today to a 1-year deal, former Raiders top pick in 2009. And then LeGarrette Blount, the running back from the Patriots and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 2-year deal. We're just under $4 million. A great signing getting Blount, a very great signing getting Hayward-Bay, because Hayward-Bay adds a little bit of a speed respect thing to the receiving core of the Steelers, and LeGarrette Blount could be a good 1-2 punch for Le'Veon Bell. Moving on from football now, actually this is one last football story. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court has decided not to hear Jerry Sandusky's appeal. Why are we wasting time with this? He did it. He knows it. They were all convicted.